Rohit, so what is it that drew you to Santosh Sachdeva and her work?
See, I have been interested in Indian culture, Indian spirituality, yoga since childhood, and I have read an enormous lot. But when I saw these images for the first time, it was initially a huge shock, because for the first time that I know of, these images are visually representing stuff that was previously thought to be impossible to communicate. They are actual experiences of the Kundalini, which till then used to be, in conversation with some master or something, they would tell you that there is this stage. And here I saw something that stunned me, because the entire inner working is laid out in sequence. Of course, the inner working in her personal journey, but her personal journey is not different from those of the other masters. And there was a whole visual teleplay, for want of a better word, or a visual movie as to how the Kundalini activates in a person, and then the mental, physical, emotional and pranic transformation that it brings in a human being. And what does that lead in terms of further awareness or further wisdom or further questioning or further knowledge? And it was, all I can say is that it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that this was happening, because I have basically almost all serious books on yoga in Sanskrit, the original text. I have all the classical texts on meditation and Kundalini, and even in there this has never been. So this was completely, the word unique is overused, but in this case it is true. This is completely one and only one. There is no other book or text or teaching which has this kind of approach, where these experiences are represented in the visual. They are not drawings, they are, in a sense, they are ways she has found to freeze one moment in what the process has been happening. So I always look at them as, this is just one frame of a movie, this is just the poster to the movie, because each one of those images represents a much vaster process. But she, for the first time in all of Kundalini Yoga, found a way to freeze that, or to visually represent that. So they are not actually drawings, they are representations of inner experiences. They are not coming from her imagination, they are coming from her experience, which in yoga, experience trumps everything. Experience trumps reveals scripture, so somebody is actually putting down the experience, not in words but in visuals. So I was like, consciousness has taken a big leap. Then she had asked me for some help in the sort of mythological aspects to the images, because I saw in my conversations with her, I would tell her, this reminds me of that story, this reminds me of that experience, and she would be like, put it down. So I started working on the book, the second and the third volumes, and of course something very sort of unexpected happened, in that the images triggered off the Kundalini in me. The images actually initiated me. She didn't formally initiate me. Her images became a gateway. Her images became a gateway or a dimensional portal. I stepped between one level of personal vibration and the other. I had enough knowledge to know that this is Kundalini activation, this is Kundalini Jagran. And I realized that she has not done it. Just sitting and working for a few months with the images, observing them, thinking what they mean, just the fact that interacting with the images. So the images are, in a very real sense, deeply condensed, immensely powerful vibrational fields. They are not sketches, they are not lines with they are a manner in which she has found to represent a certain aspect of the Kundalini unfolding, or a certain aspect of the Kundalini evolution. And the whole purpose of Kundalini is to speed up personal and social evolution, first personal then social. Yoga is a method to evolve the human being consciously rather than leaving it to nature. So I had caught that very early on about the book. I just didn't realize that it was possible for a person not sitting in the Himalayas, because I thought those were for specific people, renunciate people, old people, miraculous people. I didn't realize that somebody living what seems external to be a very normal life could be doing something so extraordinary. So to me, this was a revelation at all respects, because I had heard, and my entire learning and my entire power comes from Sri Aurobindo's notion of the integral yoga, and he says all life is yoga. You don't need to quit, you don't need to go into renunciation, you don't need to go into the Himalayas, you don't need to stop doing what you would normally do to be in yoga. And for the first time I saw actual proof. I did not see somebody who is holy, who is in a formal renunciate order or a Swami or some such thing, and I saw that enlightenment is possible, realization is possible, liberation is possible from a person living in Mumbai city. Which normally the rule is that it's not possible, but I saw that all these things are possible while living a normal life, and that to me was a sort of immense validation that okay, so one does not have to narrow oneself, one does not have to restrict oneself, one can do everything and one can keep enlarging. So this was amazing. And then, like I said, the fact that the images themselves are so potent, that the images themselves activated the Kundalini, and it did not activate in any normal or mild fashion, it activated in a tremendous fashion. So I realized what had happened, and I basically came to her and I announced that, since I have been activated by your drawings, you are my guru. And she was like, no way I'm going to take responsibility for you. And I was like, too late, it has happened. The energy connection has happened. So whether you accept me as disciple or shishya, it does not matter. Insofar as I am concerned, you are my guru. So I can lay claim to having bullied her into accepting me as a disciple, and maybe other people also, they became fortunate similarly. But this, and I can tell you now, I've been with the books for a long time. In my own path, in my own experiences, the books were an immense help and support, because when some of the more extraordinary or extreme experiences happen, you tend to feel, am I losing my mind? And then you see very similar visuals, and you realize, no, here is a person I know who has not lost her mind, in fact has become much more powerful as a consequence. She also went through these things. So in that sense, I saved myself a lot of grief, especially when you read somebody like Gopi Krishna and his experiences with the Kundalini. He scares the living daylights out of you, that if the Kundalini activation happens, it is a period of torment and suffering. I think the greatest thing that I learned from her is that the Kundalini does not have to be a violent energy, it can be a very gentle force. That to me was an immense thing, because when it activated, it did not activate in a mild fashion, it activated in a really powerful manner, but she instantly taught me how to make it move in a calmer way. So the fact that she is talking from her own Shakti, she is talking from her own personal realization, this is not book knowledge, this is all stuff that she has personally gone through, and she knows what to do. It is not even like, oh, are you going through it? So I really don't know, figure it out. She actually had very sensible things to say. So to me, the fact that here is a perfectly normal person who is also enlightened was mind-boggling. It was just like, wow, this is actually what integral yoga means. This is actually what living in the world and all life is yoga. Here is the living example of that truth. All life is yoga. Because even though Aurobindo stated it, he did lock himself up in a room for basically 25 years. So while he gave that teaching to the world, he was not the best example of it. Whereas here we have an example of it. She goes to the office, she goes and meets people, people come to meet her. She is in all sense living a perfectly ordinary life. She is living a perfectly normal, sane life. And at the same time, it is very clear that she has access to another level of consciousness, or she has access to another way of being. And sitting in her presence, you can feel that, because your mind starts calming down, your body starts calming down, your emotions start calming down, and when you have done as much Reiki and yoga as I have, you can feel that your pranamaya kosha, your pranic or your ki energy also starts coming down. And that is the whole purpose of yoga, to achieve that complete stillness, to achieve that complete equanimity. So when you have so much evidence to not see what is right in front of you, to not recognize that this is the person that I am connected to, that this is my guru, that would have been immensely stupid. I was an immensely stupid person. I had the good fortune not to blunder over here. So I basically accepted, and then my whole journey began in earnest, because till then it was in a sense a jnana yoga path. It was an accumulation of knowledge path, but I didn't have the actual spiritual or mystical or inner experiences per se. I had this immense bank of knowledge, but no personal validation of those experiences. Then the difference happened, that these things which till then I had read about, I had read that masters had spoken about, then I began to start experiencing them in myself. And not only that, I began to see the transformations that it was bringing about in my own life. The biggest shift, for instance, was the fact that I was so emotionally volatile. I was such a hot-tempered person, and today my temper is very much down. It's not like the temper goes away, it never does, but the way it is so easily triggered is no longer an issue. It is not easily triggered, and the kind of responses that you have to life situations, when you lose something valuable, instead of getting angry and fretful and depressive, you begin to get greater and greater equanimity, you begin to get greater and greater acceptance. So when I see that by their fruits you shall know them, when I see the fruits manifest in my own life, it becomes clearer and clearer to me that this is my path, this is my authentic way forward. And it does not stop, because the level of attainment or the level of wisdom that comes, it is infinite. I have begun to understand that too. There is no point where I can say, okay, that's it, I am done, I have learnt all that I need to learn. But certainly the Kundalini trilogy was what kicked it all off. The Kundalini trilogy activated me, triggered me, and took me forward.